All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Today, we're taking a deep dive into the story of SpaceX.
Oh, this will be good.
It's a company that's captured the imaginations of, well, pretty much everyone.
And for good reason.
Exactly. And to guide us through this journey, we've got excerpts from, that online encyclopedia everyone uses.
You mean the one with all the information about everything?
Yeah, that one.
Wow.
But don't worry, we're not going to bore you with dry facts and figures.
We're going to pull out the juicy bits, the aha moments, the things that'll make you say, wow, I didn't know that.
Exactly. And we're going to do it in a way that even if you're not, a rocket scientist.
You'll still be able to follow along and get a sense of just how incredible SpaceX's journey has been.
So let's rewind all the way back to the beginning. Picture this. Elon Musk, fresh off selling PayPal.
Decent chunk of change, I'd imagine.
Oh yeah, he's doing pretty well for himself at this point. But then he gets asked this simple question.
About what he plans to do next.
Exactly. And that seemingly innocent question sends Musk down this rabbit hole, right? Like Alice in Wonderland, but with rockets instead of white rabbits.
And this rabbit hole leads him to space exploration.
He becomes obsessed with the idea of making humanity a multiplanetary species.
He even goes to NASA's website, expecting to find concrete plans for a human mission to Mars.
Just casually browsing the NASA website like the rest of us.
But here's the kicker. There's nothing there. No plans, no timelines, nothing.
I bet that was a bit of a shock.
It was. And that's the spark, the moment when Musk decides to take matters into his own hands.
And that's where the Mars Oasis project comes in, right? Was he seriously thinking about growing space tomatoes on Mars at this point?
Well, the Mars Oasis project was more about generating public interest in Mars.
Grabbing people's attention, getting them excited about space travel again.
Exactly. The idea was to send this small greenhouse to Mars.
Just a little Martian garden.
And grow plants in Martian soil as a proof of concept.
Pretty ambitious, right? But to actually get that greenhouse to Mars, he needed rockets. And that's where things get really interesting.
So where do you get a rocket when you're Elon Musk? Well, you go to Russia, of course.
Russia. I'm sensing a story here.
Oh, there's definitely a story. He goes to Russia to try and buy, get this, refurbished ICBMs.
ICBMs? Wait, like the missiles?
The big ones. He figured he could use those to launch his Mars Oasis project. But he runs into two major problems.
Yeah, I'd imagine buying ICBMs isn't exactly a walk in the park.
First, the price tag was astronomical. We're talking $8 million per missile.
Ouch. That's going to put a dent in your wallet.
And second, there are stories about the Russian team not taking him seriously at all.
Like brushing him off.
Exactly. They saw this young Silicon Valley entrepreneur and thought, who is this guy?
I can imagine that didn't sit well with Elon Musk.
You know Elon. He doesn't back down from a challenge.
So this whole Russia trip was a turning point for him.
It was. It made him realize that if he wanted to make Mars colonization a reality, he had to do things differently.
Not rely on old, expensive technology.
He needed to find a way to drastically lower the cost of launching things into space.
And that's when the idea for SpaceX is born.
From trying to buy ICBMs to starting his own rocket company, talk about a bold move.
I can just picture this scene, right? Elon Musk in a hotel meeting room.
Near LAX, I think it was.
Filled with skeptical aerospace engineers.
He's laying out his vision for SpaceX. This crazy idea of building rockets that can land back on Earth.
Reusability. It's a concept that's central to SpaceX's story.
But at the time, it was unheard of. I bet there were a lot of raised eyebrows in that room.
And probably a few chuckles, too.
But some people did believe in Musk's vision. A few brave souls who were willing to take a chance on this seemingly impossible dream.
And who are some of these early pioneers?
Well, there was Tom Mueller, an absolute genius when it comes to rocket engines.
The Merlin engine, the heart of the Falcon 9, that was his brainchild, right?
Yep. And then there's Chris Thompson, a master of structural design. These guys, they formed the core of SpaceX.
And they were all in right from the start.
They believed in Musk's vision, and they were ready to put in the work to make it a reality.
So picture a small, kind of dingy office building.
3,000 square feet, I think it was, in El Segundo, California.
Not exactly the glamorous headquarters you'd expect for a company that's going to revolutionize the space industry.
But that's where it all began. Just a handful of cubicles, a few passionate engineers.
And Elon Musk probably running around like a man possessed, right?
Oh, definitely. He was hands-on with everything, interviewing every single employee in those early days.
All 3,000 of them.
He knew that finding the right people was crucial to SpaceX's success.
And he fostered this intense work ethic.
Long hours, demanding deadlines, but everyone was driven by this shared mission.
To make humanity a multiplanetary species. To get to Mars.
And it all started with their first rocket, the Falcon 1.
I've heard it was named after the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars.
It's true. Musk's a big sci-fi fan. And the Falcon 1, it was designed with one primary goal in mind, to make launching things into space cheaper.
Like, way cheaper than anyone else was doing it.
Their advertised price was a mere $6 million per launch.
$6 million, compared to the tens or even hundreds of millions that traditional launches were costing.
That's right. It was a game changer. And they achieved this by doing things differently.
They were shaking things up right from the start.
They vertically integrated their manufacturing process, meaning they built as many parts in-house as possible.
Cutting out the middleman, keeping costs down.
Exactly. And they were constantly iterating on their designs.
Testing, learning, improving with every step.
It was a far cry from the traditional, more rigid approach in the aerospace industry.
So they had this ambitious goal, a dedicated team, and a revolutionary approach to building rockets. It sounded like the perfect recipe for success, but I'm guessing it wasn't all smooth sailing.
You're right. Developing the Merlin and Kestrel engines for the Falcon 1 presented a whole new set of challenges, especially with the turbopump. Remember that?
The turbopump! Refreshed my memory. What exactly does it do again?
It's crucial, really. It pumps the fuel and oxidizer into the combustion chamber, and it has to do it incredibly fast.
And that was a sticking point.
A big one. They tried outsourcing it, even considered using one from NASA's Fast Track engine.
So go with what's already proven. Makes sense to me.
But too much bureaucracy, too many delays, not the SpaceX way.
They like to do things their own way.
Exactly. So they contracted directly with a manufacturer called Barber-Nichols.
For a custom turbopump. Got it.
And fun fact, an employee at Barber-Nichols is who came up with the names Merlin and Kestrel.
No way! Really? So the engines for the Falcon 1's first and second stage are named after?
Someone at the turbopump company.
That's amazing. Okay, so they have their engines, but they got to test them. Where did they go?
First stop, Mojave Air and Spaceport. Turns out, testing rocket engines is a bit dramatic.
Dramatic how? Spill the tea.
Well, one test resulted in a massive cloud of black soot engulfing the air traffic control tower.
Oh my goodness. I bet someone got a stern talking to after that.
More like a you gotta go.
Yeah.
They realized they needed a bigger, more remote location.
Somewhere they could really let those engines roar without causing an international incident.
Enter McGregor, Texas, an old Beale aerospace site.
From California to Texas. That's quite a move.
They flew employees and equipment back and forth on Musk's private jet.
Dedicated is an understatement.
So engines are firing, teams in place. Now it's time to launch a rocket into space. Where'd they pick for the Falcon 1's first flight?
Vandenberg Air Force Base, right? Seemed like the logical choice.
Close to headquarters, established infrastructure.
What could go wrong?
Delays. Lots of delays. The Air Force prioritized other launches, and after months of waiting, SpaceX had to abandon the site.
Leaving behind millions of dollars worth of equipment.
It was a major blow. Musk described it as a loss of resources and momentum.
But SpaceX being SpaceX,
They adapted. They had a contract to launch the Malaysian satellite Rezek-Salo.
and Vandenberg wasn't suitable for that trajectory.
They needed to be closer to the equator, so they set their sights on
Lake Island.
tiny speck in the Pacific Ocean, part of the Kwajalein Atoll.
They built a launch pad from scratch on a deserted island.
Not quite deserted, but definitely remote. Shipped over 30 tons of equipment.
Imagine the logistics.
They even built a makeshift road out of plywood to transport the rocket stages.
Talk about making do. And then there's the story about the near mutiny.
The pressure, the long hours, it took its toll. The employees staged a strike.
Demanding better working conditions.
Apparently, it was resolved with chicken wings and cigarettes.
Classic. Okay, so the team's back in action. The Falcon 1 is ready. It's launch day, March 24th, 2006. What a moment.
29 seconds into the flight, a fire breaks out, damages the pressurization system. The Merlin engine shuts down early.
I can't even imagine the disappointment.
And found the Falcon Santee-2 payload the next morning inside a machine shop.
Amazing it survived. A bittersweet reminder of the mission's ambition.
2 more launch attempts followed, both ending in failure.
But each failure brought valuable lessons, right? They refined their designs, their processes, their resolve.
And that's what set the stage for their incredible rise.
From the brink of collapse to a global powerhouse.
That's what we'll dive into next time.
So last time we left SpaceX hanging by a thread.
3 failed Falcon 1 launches. A real make-or-break moment.
Facing bankruptcy, right? What happened? How did they climb out of that hole?
Well, in 2008, a bit of a miracle.
A miracle.
Founders Fund swoops in with a $20 million investment.
Wow. Talk about a lifeline.
It gave them the breathing room to focus on their next big thing.
The Falcon 9.
A much bigger, more powerful rocket.
Not just for little satellites anymore.
This was about lifting heavier payloads, reaching higher orbits.
And there was something else about the Falcon 9, wasn't there? Something revolutionary.
You're talking about reusability.
The idea of landing a rocket back on Earth, instead of just letting it fall into the ocean.
A concept that was met with a lot of skepticism in the industry.
People thought they were crazy, right?
You can't land a rocket that's been to space. That was the prevailing wisdom.
But SpaceX, they didn't listen to the naysayers.
They believed reusability was the key to making space travel more affordable, more accessible.
So how'd they go about actually making this crazy idea work?
Lots of trial and error. I mean, it's not like landing a plane.
You're bringing a rocket back from space, dealing with all those extreme forces.
It took time, numerous attempts. There were explosions, near misses.
Can you imagine the tension at mission control during those early landing attempts?
Every time, they were collecting data, refining their algorithms, tweaking the hardware and software.
Until finally,
December 2015, they stick the landing.
back on solid ground at Cape Canaveral.
A historic achievement. It changed the game for the entire space industry.
But they didn't stop there, did they?
Oh no, they kept pushing. A few months later, they land a Falcon 9 first stage on a drone ship in the Atlantic.
A drone ship. Why land at sea?
It opens up more possibilities. You don't always need to bring the rocket back to land.
Makes sense. So these landings weren't just about showing off.
They were about making space travel more practical, more efficient.
And it worked, didn't it? Suddenly, everyone was paying attention to SpaceX.
Their reputation as innovators, as disruptors, it skyrocketed.
Their launch manifest was growing like crazy.
They're attracting customers with their reliability, their cost-effectiveness.
And their sheer audacity. So how did all of this success translate to, the bottom line?
Well, let's just say their valuation went through the roof.
How much are we talking here?
2012, they were valued at $1.3 billion. After the Dragon spacecraft successfully docked with the International Space Station,
That valuation almost doubled to $2.4 billion.
the Dragon spacecraft. Now that's another chapter in the SpaceX saga.
Not just launching things, but building spacecraft to carry cargo, and eventually people...
Filling the void left by the retired Space Shuttle program.
So 2012, SpaceX becomes the first commercial company to send a spacecraft to the ISS.
A huge milestone. It showed the world that private companies could play a major role in space.
But they didn't stop at cargo, did they?
They had their sights set on something bigger, sending humans into space aboard the Dragon.
And that's a whole other level of complexity of safety requirements.
They were meticulous, extensive testing, both on the ground and in space.
To ensure the Crew Dragon could handle the rigors of human spaceflight,
And then, in May 2020,
they launched astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley to the ISS.
the first time a private company had achieved this feat.
It marked a new era in space exploration.
But, as with any ambitious endeavor, there were bumps along the way.
Setbacks, failures, it's part of the journey.
In 2013, there was an issue with the thrusters on the Dragon spacecraft during a mission to the ISS.
Brad, they figured that out.
Remotely, they were able to fix the problem.
A delay, but not a disaster.
But then there was the CRS-7 mission in 2015.
The Falcon 9 exploded just minutes after launch.
A faulty steel strut in the helium pressure vessel was the culprit.
A tiny part with catastrophic consequences.
They grounded launches for months, investigated, redesigned, and improved their procedures.
And then there was the 2016 incident. The one on the launch pad?
The Amos 6 incident.
The images were shocking. A Falcon 9 engulfed in flames.
It was a major setback. It destroyed the Amos 6 communications satellite.
What caused that explosion?
It turned out to be a very complex issue. The interaction of solidified liquid oxygen with a carbon composite material.
Something they hadn't encountered before.
They had to go back to the drawing board, redesign systems, modify procedures.
But they learned from every failure, didn't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Each setback made them stronger, more resilient.
So let's talk funding. How have they fueled this incredible journey?
Early on, it was private investment, some government contracts,
But now,
to diversify their revenue streams.
still some government contracts, especially from NASA.
But increasingly, they're relying on commercial contracts.
launching satellites for companies all over the world.
And then there's Starlink,
Their satellite internet constellation.
a game changer in itself.
Hmm.
And then, of course, there was that massive investment in 2015.
Google and Fidelity Investments poured $1 billion into SpaceX.
They saw the potential, the disruption, the new markets SpaceX was creating.
And let's not forget the 2020 investment from Abu Dhabi-based IHC.
A global player recognizing SpaceX's impact.
From a scrappy startup in a tiny office
To a global powerhouse, attracting billions in investment.
it's a remarkable story of vision, determination, and pushing the boundaries of what's possible in space.
And we haven't even talked about Starship yet.
We've been on quite a ride with SpaceX, haven't we?
From those early days with the Falcon 1 all the way to Crew Dragon and reusable rockets.
It's been an incredible journey. But what's next for them? Where do they go from here?
Well, they're not slowing down, that's for sure.
I'd imagine not.
All eyes are on Starship right now.
Ah, yes. Starship, that's the big one, isn't it?
The big one, literally.
The giant stainless steel rocket, the one that's going to take us to Mars eventually.
That's the plan.
Reusable rockets are already mind-blowing, but Starship takes it to a whole new level.
We're talking fully reusable, both the booster stage and the spacecraft itself.
So both parts land back on Earth after a mission.
Exactly. Imagine that. A spaceship launches, delivers its payload, and then both pieces come back ready to fly again.
It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie.
It does, doesn't it? But
That's-
it's real. This is happening.
So why build something this big, this powerful? What's the ultimate goal?
Starship is designed to enable missions far beyond Earth orbit.
Like deep space missions.
To the moon, to Mars, maybe even further.
It's about establishing a permanent human presence on other planets.
Exactly. Elon Musk's vision, remember. Making humanity a multiplanetary species.
It's a pretty bold vision, to say the least.
Yeah.
But building something like Starship, it can't be easy.
It's an immense engineering challenge. They've hit a few bumps along the way.
That orbital test flight in 2023, the one where Starship exploded,
A setback, for sure.
what exactly happened there?
Multiple issues during ascent, and ultimately they had to activate the flight termination system.
So, not the outcome they were hoping for.
Spaceflight is inherently risky, especially when you're pushing the boundaries like SpaceX does.
But they always seem to learn from these setbacks, don't they?
They analyze the data, figure out what went wrong, and use that knowledge to improve.
It's part of their DNA, this constant iteration, this drive to improve.
They're not just focused on short-term gains. They're thinking decades ahead about the future of humanity in space.
It's not just about the technology either, is it? There's this whole other dimension to what SpaceX is doing.
You mean the impact on our collective imagination?
Exactly. They've reignited the sense of wonder about space.
They've captured people's imaginations, shown us that space is no longer just for governments and scientists.
It's a place for dreamers, for innovators, for anyone who dares to look up at the stars and ask, what if?
They've challenged us to think bigger, to dream bigger, to believe that anything is possible.
That's a powerful legacy, isn't it?
It is. They've reminded us that we're explorers at heart, that the desire to push beyond limits, it's in our nature.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From those early nail-biting Falcon 1 launches, to reusable rockets, to Crew Dragon, to the audacious vision of Starship.
It's been quite a journey.
And it's far from over. SpaceX has shown us that the impossible is often just a challenge waiting to be overcome.
They've given us a glimpse of a future where humanity reaches beyond Earth and into the vastness of space.
It's a future that's both exciting and inspiring, and we can't wait to see what SpaceX does next.
Who knows what incredible feats they'll accomplish.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the history of SpaceX. Until next time.